Hello and welcome back to the Relax It's Just Business podcast, the bi-monthly show where we discuss everything business, like the news to reviews, and we always leave you with a tip that you can use. We are your hosts. My name is Louie Z, and I am graciously accompanied by my good friend, Mike T. So without further ado, relax, sit back, and let's talk business. Mike, it's been a month, 4 weeks.
That's too long, Louie. It's too long for me.
I was relaxing on spring break. Do you remember what spring break felt like?
I don't. It's
From your undergrad degree.
It is frustrating. You know what? It's funny you said that too, because I have a friend who he's been going on spring break every year since he had it in school, and now we're 5 years out of school, and he still takes 1 week around mid-March every single year. And
That's awesome.
Goes on spring break. So I always thought that was funny, and I'm jealous. But right now, man, bask in it. Bask in the fact that you got that spring break week. So
Well, what's funny is that I was, thinking that there was probably some sort of spring break in like elementary school and middle school and things like that. And so, since I want to do my Ph.D. and then hopefully teach, I could potentially have had spring break my whole life.
Man, that is great. Absolutely.
So what's been going on this last month, man? I mean, we took the last time we would have recorded off, and then. So what's been going on these last 4 weeks?
Yeah, so it's been pretty good. I'm kind of glad we had that break only for the aspect of my amped up work from my personal job and actually our business, the small business that I run. So for small businesses, taxes are due, I think, on like the 15th of March. And they're supposed.
Oh, really? It's not in April?
No. So at least I don't know if it's just because that's what our accountant was trying to get us to do, but he told us that it was due by March 15th. Because in order to file our personal taxes, we actually need a form from the business taxes. So I know there's definitely a gap where you're supposed to turn one in first and then have the next, and so. They're due on March 15th, to my understanding. So we had, and I've kind of been taking a little bit more of the finance role in our business. So I really had to get, my workbooks up to snuff and get him all the information he needs and make sure we were good to go from a tax standpoint. So,
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I guess you don't. I feel like when someone goes ahead and starts a business, I feel like. At least for me, maybe that's just being a marketing person. I just don't even think about, like, you got to remember to do your taxes for your business. It's like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I have to do this.
Yeah. It's awakening. Luckily, I took the entrepreneurship route at NIU, so I had a little bit of understanding of a lot of that stuff, and we did so much research before we started a business that we knew these things would eventually creep up. So it's just prepping. But hey, while I was analyzing spreadsheets and plugging in the right numbers into taxes, you were off somewhere in gorgeous weather in DC, right?
Yeah, so went to Washington DC. I wouldn't say that it was gorgeous weather. It was still cold and windy, but I can't complain because I didn't have to work or do anything like that. Funny enough, my Jeep Patriot has seen most of the country. What was it? 3 spring breaks ago, or I guess 2 spring breaks ago. We went down to South Padre, Texas, so that was like 10 minutes from Mexico or whatever. And then so that was like 31 hours to get there. And then the last spring break, we went to Seattle, and so that was another, 30 hours because we hit all the national parks between Chicago and Seattle. So we did, everything from Mount Rushmore to Custer State Park to Devil's Tower to going to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone and Crazy Horse, and so we did all that, and now we drove to D.C. So my Jeep has seen a decent amount of the United States, which I'm proud to say. But it was really cool because we went to Philadelphia, which the historic part of Philadelphia is just beautiful.
Right.
And I specify that because that's all we saw. I'm sure the rest of the city is just as gorgeous. But it was just really cool to see kind of where the country was born. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes of literally committing a treasonous act of even saying that we want to be independent from British control. And so when Henry Lee of the First Continental Congress proposed that idea, everyone who agreed to it, that was a completely treasonous act. So it's hard because we're used to, from birth, we're given all these rights and liberties. So it's really hard to kind of put yourself in the mindset of, like, if this goes wrong, I lose my life, and
Right.
my family probably loses their lives too. And so, like, seeing houses that past presidents have lived in, and where, like, part of the Declaration of Independence was actually written, and then, of course, going to D.C. and seeing all the historical sites and being able to get a tour of Congress, and our congressman out here is Adam Kinzinger, so we were able to reach out to him, and I have a buddy that works for him, and so it just really worked out really well to be able to see the Capitol building kind of from a VIP perspective, and go into a lot of different restricted areas, and just be able to see all the history that this country has accrued over the last 200 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's miraculous. I think that's one of the many places I haven't been, and I really want to go. I know a lot of people in 7th or 6th grade do a DC trip.
Right.
That's not something I was lucky enough to go on. So it's eventually I make it out there, but it's really cool to see all the history and like you said, just even you talking about the different types of history you got to see makes me sad I didn't have a spring break with you, Louie.
Well, you bring up that trip. It's funny because they say that it's a trip that, like, all these people, all the kids enjoy and whatnot, but at that time it's just kind of like getting away from mom and dad,
right?
Or whatever your living situation is, just getting away. Kind of being with your friends, because I remember doing that, but I remember doing it, but I don't really remember much about DC. So doing it later, when you actually can soak it all in and enjoy it, was pretty cool. But let's go ahead and go into a new segment that we're going to install here, and that's, instead of just covering one or two business topics, Mike, what do you say I toss a bunch of different topics your way, and we'll banter back and forth on them as much as we can?
Yeah, as long as you're ready for me to hit it back at you, I'm all for that.
All right, let's go. So we're going to call this segment Rapid Fire Business, and I'm going to go down the top trending news headlines here, and we're going to talk about them. Okay, so number one, Wall Street closing sharply lower on Tuesday, with each major U.S. index suffering their fourth biggest decline in 5 sessions. Go.
Yeah, I think obviously this is crazy for the economy, how it's been moving, and to see it go up so high. I know people are anticipating types of bubbles. People are anticipating all sorts of different changes in the market, but a lot of the stuff now I think is just the moves that Trump is making on the economy. There's things like the steel tariffs and other tariffs that he keeps implying are going to happen. So I think people just aren't sure right now with what's going to happen in business, because even though you stop these foreign businesses or foreign tariffs from happening, it still affects every single American thing going on. So
Yeah. Well, and then you also have China imposing tariffs as well, and so you're teetering on a trade war between multiple countries. And I feel like the stock market is very sensitive to most things, but especially when it comes to businesses being directly affected by tariffs. And so, do you think that this is just the beginning, or are we going to see? Is this just what people are calling a correction, or what are we going to see in the future?
I can't even try to predict, because if I could, Louie, we would be in a big we would be in a big
we
fancy
be doing
office.
A podcast.
we'd be doing a fancy office podcast video here, talking about our successes. But no, I
Sure.
think the tariff is a very scary word, because people don't know what's going to happen. You hope that it brings jobs to the country, and you hope it continues to increase productivity and things for the U.S., but in the end, we just don't know. So I would anticipate that you're going to see it drop a little bit more, but I don't think there's a landslide, coming right away. I think people are they're starting to pull out money that, they had put in there to kind of see if it could rise, but anybody who's, I don't think there's rush to the bank, take out all your money right now. It's just kind of that, if you will, funny money that you had in there to see how high you can get it, and people are unsure what's happening, so... I don't know.
Cool. Next. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope. Go.
All right. So Uber self-driving car hit and killed a pedestrian. Go.
Yeah. This stinks. I'm all for self-driving cars. I want them to happen. As much as I love driving, I know we talked about it in the segment. I just think it's beneficial to people. Eventually, when we can get technology up to snuff, it's going to be good for us. Everything will be quicker. We'll get to our locations faster. Things will actually become safer. But for now, there's too many variables, and hitting a person is a definite no-no. I don't know what your thought is on that, but
I was reading more about it today, and there is a company that makes the like awareness software within these self-driving cars. And they put that software into these Volvo SUVs. And so that company was getting a lot of flack. And I don't know if the company's name has been revealed or not. But that company was getting a lot of flack. But then they produced a statement that said, hold on, Uber actually turned off our software, and they used their own self-awareness software when that crash occurred. And Uber's been asked to comment, and they have declined to comment since. So that is something that's definitely interesting, because I know that Volvo has been using this company's awareness software, and I've also read various articles in like the New Yorker and various other news outlets that have said that those Volvo self-driving cars are, it's actually really smooth, really nice to use. So this might actually end up being a Uber problem and not necessarily a self-driving car problem, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think you're just going to have to kind of sit back and watch it and see where it's going to go. Because I know all the companies aren't going to stop just because of this. They're going to refine what they have and keep going.
Right. Cool. Next. All right, so Tesla is scaling back their Facebook. They removed their Facebook profiles because of everything that's going on with Facebook. What's your take with Facebook and big data, and what is your take on Zuckerberg testifying before the U.S. Congress?
Yeah, I think that first off, you said Tesla's removing their ads, and I think that that's almost important, because they're this big innovative tech company, and they know that there's breaches and violations that can happen in big data, and there's somebody that is going to almost benefit from pulling off of Facebook, because they're seeing this as, this is an issue. The fact that he hid it is the bigger issue, or not necessarily didn't hid it, but he didn't disclose that there was a data breach. And that lies the whole issue. And for anybody that doesn't know, the story is that Facebook was hacked, and millions of people's personal information was just released out there. So, and it happened years ago, and people are just now talking about it because Mark Zuckerberg kind of had swept it under the rug. And now it just got exposed, and I'm not quite sure how it got exposed, but since it did, we're facing all these other kinds of issues. I think you're going to see ads start to come down. You're going to see people get really angry with Facebook. But I think that just comes down to how secure people think big data is. Personally, I know anything I put on the internet or any data that's out there, it can be accessed. And it's a scary thing, but I kind of just live my day knowing that and try to do the best I can at securing what I can. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So the gist that I have on this whole situation is there's a company called Cambridge Analytica, and they used various surveys to get data on various people or subgroups of people, and so they got like a couple 100,000 replies. However, when those people opted into the survey, what they were also agreeing to is that anything that their friends also made public, they were Cambridge Analytica's database was able to also harvest. And so those first 100,000 people that participated in this survey, they opted into this survey. They gave consent for that survey, but all of their friends did not. And so this number jumps from just 100,000s. So they harvested more than 50 million Facebook users' data, and there's various congressmen accusing President Trump in them helping the 2016 election campaign because Cambridge Analytica has been linked to him as well as various other senators and congressmen helping find various subgroups of people and how to better target them. Now, what I will say is that the New York Times came out with a really cool piece saying how you can protect yourself. If you haven't done so already, go to Facebook, go to your settings, and under settings, click on apps and look at all the applications that you've gave consent to. And you can also see what kind of consent you've given to that application. So you can say, what kind of data can they see? Just yours or friends of friends or just friends? And I actually ended up deleting a bunch of apps that I gave permission to maybe years ago that are still harvesting data, and you might not know about it. So it'll be interesting to see. I thought it was really interesting that Mark Zuckerberg took out all of these hard copy ads in various newspapers all around the world when he could have just broadcasted this on Facebook or on some other electrical platform. I thought that was kind of interesting. It will be interesting to see what happens when he testifies before the U.S. Congress. It doesn't seem like he's going to testify before the British Parliament Committee. And just kind of see what happens and where it goes from here, because big data is becoming more and more prevalent every single day, and I think some people are just getting flat out scared by it. So
I think with all the new updates, Facebook, other social media, any other thing, all data is going online. Everybody's starting to do everything online, and they have been for a while. And so along with that comes a bunch of different random things that we've never even thought of, Can they access your CD drive? Can they do all these other things? So I think as we grow as a big social media companies, and as we grow as just individual consumers, we're going to have to start taking more liberties ourselves to make sure that our data is protected. So I think...
Yeah.
But right now, another one of those that we gotta kind of sit back and see how Congress takes it and what actions they do moving forward.
Cool. All right, Stormy Daniels in 60 Minutes. How do you feel about it? Go.
Yeah, this one is a tough one to get into just because, man, it goes strictly political. You're seeing a whole ton of things being done this year that nobody has ever done in the past from a presidential standpoint. Now, there's been scandals, yes. There's been, things to come along, but definitely within the last couple decades, more than that, 30, 40 years, you haven't seen these just outlandish things start to come forward and be okay. So, I think we're at a really weird place as a country right now. I still think America's the best country in the world. I'm a proud American, but I also think that I don't know what it's going to take for him to be, frowned upon by people in the country. So hearing this thing, unfortunately, was not shocking.
Right.
Any other political campaign would have been, a death strike, and it's just another tick, and I don't know how many ticks it takes for some actionable thing to happen. So, we'll see. I don't know what your take is on it.
I think you hit on a really good point. I think whenever something like this happens, I really believe that it's important to say, what if this would have happened to this person? Or what if this would have happened to that person in this circumstance? Like, for example, something that happened a couple weeks ago when there was a man on The Voice, I believe it was, and he said that he had never had his first kiss before because he was saving that for a romantic moment, and then Katy Perry comes over and says, "Hey, come over here, give me a kiss on the cheek." He does. She said that's not good enough. She says to kiss her again. He does, and then she turns right at the last second and kisses him, and he said he was uncomfortable and all this stuff. And so I think even for situations like that, it's important to say to yourself, what if this situation was flipped? What if that was like a 30-some-year-old guy or man, kind of ploying a 19-year-old, I think that's how old he was, female. Or what if it was male to male or female to female? Or what if it was an attractive male to an attractive female or an unattractive male? You know what I mean? Like do all of these different scenarios and see if you're still okay with it. And if you're not, I feel like that is maybe a situation that needs to be talked about. So I feel like the same thing applies to this whole Stormy Daniels thing of compare this to another president. And what if this was happening on its own? What if this was just an isolated case in front of a presidency that's been flawless in most retrospects thus far? Would it have more weight than it does now when it's just among all these other allegations that are coming out? What I will touch on is I feel like stories like this are not going to go away because this was the biggest 60 Minutes showing since 2008 when 25 million people turned in to see then President-elect Barack Obama and his wife Michelle, because they Stormy Daniels, she
had to tell
brought in 22.1 million viewers.
Crazy.
For this 60 Minutes episode. So if that is of any weight to you, I don't know if these stories are ever going to go away. What do you also feel about how people were zooming in on her eyes? I don't know if you saw this.
No.
But people were zooming in on her eyes, and her pupils were super dilated, apparently. So they thought that she was on some sort of, drug, or some sort of drugs or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but the pictures are pretty telling. But of course you can't believe pictures that are on the internet, things like that. So I don't know if you heard that or not, but
no, I think everybody's going to analyze it in different ways and odd ways. So as far as that goes, I think it's a pain in the ass, but I'd really rather people focus on other important things, important things in our country versus this. But hey, it's we're all along for this ride right now, and all we can do is do our best.
All right, last topic. We're gonna end on not the best positive note, but NRA gun control in schools. How do you feel about it? Go.
This is tough. I'm someone who understands and appreciates guns, but at the same time, I understand that public safety is super important. I think that this is a really, really big battle that's been going on for a while, and it's just blowing up right now. And I think people are expecting these huge answers to come, and banning of all these guns right away, and banning of all this stuff. And I know personally, I've tried to take a lot of sides here. I've tried to look at it from every possible angle. Like the week after this happened, there's actually a gun show that was at a local gun shop, and they were, guns were on sale, and there were vendors everywhere, and I went to the show. Now I don't have a FOID card, and I don't own a gun or anything like that, but I went and I was able to kind of see what other people were doing. I had some friends that were interested in guns, but I talked to a lot of these vendors because to me it's really interesting to see the other side.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I know, like, the NRA is, the NRA is there to try to make gun safety a priority and give people, it's for responsible gun owners, and in any given circle, people who own guns, you're going to find bad people. You're going to find bad eggs. You're going to find people who don't understand things for what they are. And so I don't think anything's going to come from it really quick. I think it's going to be a slower process than everybody wants. I also think it's fantastic that these people and students are marching up against it. The
March for Our Lives.
Yeah, it's just good to see that they care about something, and it's an important topic. I don't care which side you agree with. It's an important topic, and these ones, for too long, are just not handled properly. Anything that's an important topic just seems to get wiped under the rug. So it's kind of cool to see something come forward from it. I think you're going to get immediate bans to things like bump stocks, who I talked to. I didn't even know what a bump stock really was, but what it is something that converts a standard semi-automatic weapon, and it resets, I think, the pin in the gun or something in the gun so that you can fire your next bullet faster. And every single gun guy I was talking to, even the guys behind the counter selling the guns, they were like, we don't care. Get rid of it. If that's important and you guys think that it's super detrimental, that's fine, because that has nothing to do with us. And then these extended magazines, half the guys wanted it just because when they target practice they wanted more rounds, but half of them were like, yeah, that's fine, I don't need tons and tons of rounds in there. So you just get a really big mix, and I never try to assume somebody's side before I get all the facts, and I'm still gathering. So I know it's a very split decision view.
It's a very presidential
it is
viewpoint.
It is Mike 2020. He's coming for you.
Yeah, there you go. It's an interesting debate. I think that I lean more towards when something fatal happens on the roads, or something fatal happens on various driving conditions or various streets that aren't well organized. The government can go into a full-fledged operation into checking speed limits, checking the way that curves turn around corners, checking the way that cars come in on interstates, checking how all of this works in the ecosystem of our, the way that we have transportation set up in this country. And then they can reform it, and they can add new regulations and add new laws and have seatbelt laws and have airbag checks and have different standards of operations within that whole driving experience. And something like 9/11 happens, and then you have a TSA revamp, and you can't bring liquids more than 3 ounces, and you can't bring various sharp objects unless you get them checked, and you have to have your bags go through a body or through the scanner, and you have to go through a body scanner. And so when things happen, laws need to be, or regulations should be put in place to make sure that those are deterred for next time. But this gun debate doesn't seem to follow the same criteria that everything else in our society has followed thus far. And so I think that if these things are still happening, I tend to think that one thing that's not going to change is the way that we almost glorify some of these shooters, how their name is just blasted everywhere for weeks at a time, how their face is always shown, and it's just like instant gratification for what they're out to do, which is cause mass chaos. And if you want to be known on a national scale and you want to be known as quickly as possible, and you commit one of these crimes, you know that you're going to get that publicity, but that's besides the point. But I tend to think that politics is a big compromise. Like we talked about D.C. earlier. I'll talk about it again. Thomas Jefferson wanted the capital to be in Virginia, and Hamilton wanted the capital to be in New York, but they compromised and let Washington pick the location, and he picked it along the Potomac River in between those two locations in Washington, D.C. And so, politics is constant compromise. The Bill of Rights was a compromise. There's various compromises that have been going on, and I think that both sides of the aisle need to compromise and at least get something passed. I'm not saying full gun reform, and I'm not saying give teachers guns. I'm not saying either of those things. I wish that we could find a middle ground and make slow increments to make it so it's a perfect system, like a lot of other things that we have. And everything that we have is not a perfect system, but it's going to be consistently working towards that. The last thing I'll end on with that is a retired Supreme Court Justice, John Paul Stevens. He wrote a New York Times op-ed this afternoon talking about the Second Amendment, and he said that more gun law campaigners are closer to the objective than any other possible reform. He argues that until a 2008 Supreme Court ruling, there was no absolute right to guns, and he said he calls the amendment a relic and says that it needs to go. And so a retired Supreme Court justice, I don't know which way he leans, if he leans left or right, or if he's fairly neutral. I'm not sure, but I think it's a little telling when a Supreme Court justice says that sometimes these amendments were made and they were made soundly at the time, but they need to be reformed as time goes on. So I think that wraps up the rapid-fire business topics. You did a good job with me just spitballing topics at you, Mike.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
And I think we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll come back and do a brief explanation of the new format. See you soon. Welcome back to the RIJB podcast, and we are going to talk about a brief explanation of the new format. We've been getting a lot of great feedback. Thank you so much for everyone who's been listening. But I think that the feedback we've been getting, we're taking to heart, and we're going to kind of revamp this up, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think the format that we had before was kind of a little bit more, outliney, and it felt a little bit. It didn't flow as much. We weren't relaxing enough. I think it was taken away from our podcast, and I think me and Louie work really well back and forth, and that was one of the big things I know I got, and I know Louie got feedback from is more back and forth, more talking, more of just you guys.
They want our buttery smooth voices.
Yeah, we're seducing them via the microphone, and it's something that we, like I said, took to heart, and we want to kind of revamp. So instead of the standard topic, we're going to switch it to kind of topics at the front, and then a topic at the end. And they could be free flowing. We want to keep some sort of current events in the mix. We want to make sure that we're always talking about bettering yourself in business, and we'll leave some room open for personal interests as well. So we think this is going to give us a little bit more free flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having two big sections is going to allow us to act like we're sitting on two couches, maybe having a cigar, doing just catching up as friends, talking about business as any two business-minded people would.
Yeah.
Where before we were really worried about, oh my gosh, we're at the 20-minute mark. We need to cut this.
Right.
And then we weren't talking as much as we wanted to. So the most feedback, and I think it's good feedback, and constructively, people are like, we want to hear more of you, you actually talking about various things that you care about. So,
yeah, absolutely. And like we said, we still want to keep the spirit of this around. We said on the very first show, it's kind of like we can grab a beer and a cigar and enjoy ourselves kind of together. And so we're still going to keep a lot of the same topics, same things intact. Some of the mini segments we've spun off on, we're going to probably branch out even more and have a little bit of segments here. But and this break, the break that we want, we're still really hopeful that we can get this thing moving and get some sponsors and kind of the whole 9 yards that you guys have heard on our last episodes. So we're going to take this time to do things like that. Mention sponsors.
Yep.
Do the questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. So for our tip this week, Mike, I want to ask you, being in the business field, I feel like in college you can get away with dressing maybe a little under what you think is appropriate, just because sometimes you might have the money or anything like that. But for you, in your company, what is business casual, and how can someone nail it, and maybe how can someone stand out? And I can offer some tips on that part too.
Yeah, so I think in offices, it really, really depends. There's a lot of different atmospheres in a lot of different companies. And at the first company I was at, it was business casual every day. That included Fridays, everything like that. And what that entailed was nice pair of slacks, nice pair of dress shoes, and button-down shirt. You could do polos. Yeah. They preferred you not to, unless it had, company logo or something. So a lot of button-down shirts. And in the summers and things, you would get to switch it up and wear jeans, but that was the philosophy of the company. In the one I have now, we're kind of business casual, but we have the opportunity to wear jeans as much as we want. Now,
okay.
When it comes to dress, you have to look at why can we dress the way that we dress, and why does a company allow suits versus being able to wear a t-shirt to work? And the big thing is industries. Look at what the industry is. If look at what your customers are. Look at what they have. Our customers and the sales reps that I deal with, and the other people that I deal with in my company, if I was in a suit and tie every day, it would look very weird. And because I'm in hardware, the guys who are in hardware,
sure.
The guys using our product, they're grimy, they got oil over their hands, they're working. They don't want some guy in a suit coming up to them and being like, hey, I read on a spreadsheet, this is what you need to do.
Right.
So, in my environment, business casual still shows that, hey, we're in an office setting. But at the same time, you come in with a tie and you just look like you're somebody who doesn't understand the business. So at the level I'm at, and a lot of entry levels, just make sure you have nice button downs. Make sure that you have a handful of pants that you can wear interchangeably, and dress to what your coworkers are dressing too. That's a huge giveaway. Now I deal with sales reps, and I also deal with vendors who come in. And so if there's a day that I know a vendor's coming in, like tomorrow I have to meet with one, I'm going to dress up nicer. I'm going to put on a nice button down. I'm going to go strictly business casual. But on Thursday, or on Friday, I know I have no meetings or I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to put jeans and a nice polo on, or jeans and a nice, a more Friday evening button down on, something that's a little bit toned down, but still nice to look at.
Right. Yeah. So it's all situational based on what's going on.
Yeah.
And okay. Yeah. That's fair. And I think that when it comes to business casual, that you can always, you can get away with dressing up, and then always take if you have a sport coat on, you could take that off.
Right.
Or being able to kind of mix it up, have some fun, be able to stand out with wearing various fun socks, or maybe having a fun pocket square, or mixing it up with a bow tie or something like that. But you're right. I mean, if you're meeting with people who are going to take you to be almost foolish if you're dressed in a suit and tie, then that's just not good for business.
Right.
You want to relate more to your customers than you want to just impress your customers with how well you can dress. So I think that's a good tip.
I think just one of the biggest advice I can give you too is dress like your boss. It's a big tip, especially if you're not sure what you want to do, if you're not sure how you should be dressing. I know my first 3 months at both new jobs that I had, I dressed exactly how I saw my boss coming in, because he's comfortable with what he's wearing, so you're also comfortable, and B, you're in the right setting. So, if you're ever in doubt, wear what your boss is wearing. And like you said, Louie, it's easier to dress down than it is up. So it's okay to come in the first couple weeks or your first, time at an internship wearing a tie. You might get, I got razzed when I wore a tie to my first day of work, but you know what? I'm okay with that because I looked better than everybody else in the room.
All right, fair enough. Well, hey, I think you answered that really well. That's your tip of the week, and now we are going to dive back in to the last segment here with, should you get a master's degree? Is it worth it? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the RIJB podcast, and we're going to talk about master's degrees. Are they worth it? When should you get one? I'm getting one now. Is it a waste of time? Is the master's degree the new bachelor's degree? I don't know. Mike, what do you think? If you're hiring someone, does a master's degree stand out more than just having a bachelor's degree, or is it kind of a moot point?
I think that there is so many circumstances out there when it comes to hiring and jobs, and we're going to try to stick to the business world here because obviously this is a business podcast, but I think the master's degree has the potential to speak volumes. There's different companies that have different views on this, and I think it's interesting, and the reason I talked to Louie about wanting to do this and want to talk about this is why why get a master's degree. I know Louie, he's finishing school, he's going right into a master's degree. Yep. He's got a plan. For me, if you would have asked me freshman or sophomore year, I would have told you absolutely I'm getting a master's degree. Then when I graduated, I would have thought, I'm going to give it a year or two. And now I'm a couple years away, and I'm I'm not sure. I'm still not sure if I'm going to end up doing it. I think you really have to evaluate the master's degree as a whole. Where just like everything else in life and especially in business, what's the ROI? What's the ROI on you getting this? Because it's a significant time and money investment. So, what are you going to get out by getting a master's degree?
I think there's multiple avenues that you can take, right? So if you're planning on being a master, excuse that pun there, but if you're planning on being a master at a specific craft, then maybe perfecting that will be beneficial for you. If you want to be a data analyst and you did computer science as a undergrad, and then you want to perfect that and then go into information systems as a master's, and then you can go to a data analyst company and say, I have done the research, I have done the labs. I've taken the exams, and I've perfected to a reasonable degree this skill, and I want to apply that to your company. I think that putting forth the time and effort to make yourself more renowned, and make yourself more educated on a specific topic is definitely going to work wonders for you. But also, if you can get your company to pay for that, that's even better.
Yes.
If you can say, hey, I want to move up, and in order to move up, I need to get this MBA. Maybe going back and refreshing some of your skills and learning how to cooperate with people that you don't know, and learning the different intricacies of, because business changes. I mean, business constantly changes, and if you're stuck in the same business for 5, 6, 7 years, you're going to be accustomed to that same routine. And so going back to school to get a higher degree will also broaden the concepts that you already know, and will allow you to reach further into business, and be able to actually kind of relate more to your customers and propel yourself further in your career. Now, for myself, I'm using the master's degree as a stepping stone to get my Ph.D. And I'm doing that because I'm using the master's as an opportunity to do some research, have some research publications and some research papers produced by the time I get to Ph.D. school, but then also learn a skill that I think is never going to go away. It's only going to be more prevalent in our lives, and that's information systems. So I'm getting my MIS degree, even though I was a marketing major, because I think in my undergrad, and I'm doing that because I think that it's going to allow me to have a broader perspective on what to do research on, since I'm interested in doing research in sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think life has to be a pivot. I think when it comes to being professional, one of the biggest benefits you can have is being ready to pivot. Because, like you said, you had this kind of linear path that makes sense for you to take. And what you have to do is, personally, every 2 years, I kind of like to look back and reevaluate where I'm at and go, okay.
I think that's great.
Where's the next step? Okay, I want to be CEO in 2 years. Okay, what do I need to get there? Is it realistic? Is it something I can do? And have these ever-changing, plans, but just understand where you want to go and how to get there. I have a friend right now who he's looking up business schools because at his company, it doesn't matter how good you're doing your job or how well you're doing. They really, really want their managers to have master's degrees. Now it doesn't mean he can't get there from where he's at, but he knows that he's been in his role for 3 years. He could work there probably for another 7 and then probably get bumped, or he can try to get his master's in the next couple years and get bumped. And so you have to look at that. Right now I'm in a spot where to get to the next level, I don't necessarily need a master's degree. And what would it help? Getting a master's degree in the next 2 years, for me personally, doesn't fit on my career path. Because of the skills that I need to grow and what I need to do to get to the next level. So I think always being ready to pivot and understanding where you want to be is going to help you decide when and if you should get your master's.
Yeah, I think that as long as education stays as as valuable as it is in our society, and I think that it will stay valuable moving forward. You also have to look at it from a strictly business aspect about leverage and negotiation.
Right.
If you go into a job interview, or you walk into your boss's office looking to get a raise, you can say with confidence, hey, look, I'm dedicated to this because I went back to school, or I'm dedicated to this because I stayed in school and got my master's. I went and got my DBA or got a PhD or whatever the case may be, and so I can demand another $20,000 on my on my salary, or I can demand having a higher level position on my name tag, on my business card, like having that more responsibility, because education is, it's a big package, right? Like, it's not just the material you cover in class.
Right.
Education is also the ability to work in teams, to meet deadlines, to have sleepless nights and still get your work in on time, to be able to, stay up to 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning to get an assignment done. And you're balancing work plus school plus social life plus clubs. You're balancing all these things. And if you take everything I just said and apply that to the business world, you're going to be doing the same thing there too. And so education, the educational process and the business world really do work hand in hand, and they are similar in many ways, and they're different in many ways too.
Right.
But it just being able to put that degree in front of someone from a credible university says a lot more than just the fact that you got your education.
Right. And that's even a whole sub-meta to getting your master's is, where do you get it? When do you get it? And, like, what school? Some people think that, if you go get a master's from the same school you got your undergrad from, it doesn't mean anything. Or, where are you going to be working? If I get a master's degree from, I don't even know if they offer it, but there's a school, Benedictine University, kind of close to where I live, or my parents are. If I get a master's from there, and then I go to, South Kentucky, they've never heard of Benedictine. Is that master's worth anything?
Right.
Is it worth not anything, because obviously it's going to be worth something, but is it worth as much as you think it does? Is it going to have a lot of clout around the area? If you're in Chicago and you have something from Benedictine, people might know it, or people do know it. So is it not worth going to get your master's until, you can get into like a Northwestern or, some big school?
Right.
So it's just, I think the answer or question, is it worth getting your master's, unfortunately ends with, it depends. It's always going to depend on what you have. And you do have...
Yeah, that's anything in life.
Yeah, and you have to know that you're going to be taking on additional debt, and how do you mitigate that? Because on average, you have a 20% salary increase with a master's degree, just in general, in a given field. And that's assuming that you get it after school. So you work for a little bit, you get your master's, and then you go into a different job. On average, it's 20% pay bump. So, is it worth it? How many years of that 20% pay bump would you have to get in order to get your master's money
to
back?
pay off.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like I said, do you need it for your next level? I think it's fun to think about, and it's interesting to consider. But like me, I've constantly had it on my radar every single year. When I have friends that go into it, I try to get material offline, or I talk to them about how they did it, what they needed to do, and you just keep in communication, and don't write off going and getting additional education as worthless, even if you think that it's not going to help you at all, because you never know where the market's going to turn. You never know what's going to happen. Heck, master's degrees could go away because there's no tradespeople, and tradespeople come out of college or high school making 100, 6 figures, so
right.
I think that the world's ever changing, and you just have to make sure that you are also there, and keep everything in play until you get to a point in your life where you're comfortable with where you're at, and whether or not you need it.
Yeah, and you gotta look at yourself too. So some people might say, "Man, I barely was able to get my undergrad. School is just not where I thrive. So going back would be a waste of time." And sometimes you gotta play the game.
Yep.
Your boss might say, "Hey, listen, I really want to promote you, but you gotta get your master's." They could say it doesn't matter where it's from, I don't care. Just make sure you have that piece of paper, and then you could take it online, like during the evenings when you have time when you get home from work or, whatever. If you really want to do it, you can find time to fit it into your schedule, and you will be able to, hopefully reap the benefits of it.
Right, exactly.
Cool. You have any more to add on that point?
No, I think we really mastered that question.
Ooh. All right.
Didn't see that coming.
That is a good point. I think that's a great point to end on. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Relax It's Just Business podcast, our 4th episode on the ever-growing quest of business here. If you liked the video and you liked what we're doing here, go ahead and hit subscribe and make sure that you get more of our content. Feel free to like us on Facebook at the Louie Z blog webpage. There you can grab the grab and go link via the Amazon Web Services, and you can take that with you on your next car ride. So until next time in 2 weeks, we will see you later. Thanks so much for listening, and take care. Boom.